Welcome, everyone, to Mythstorie, the podcast about myths and history. I am one of your hosts, Bryant, with Peter's back. Hey, Peter.
Hey, that theme music gets
And
me so
Cammy, of
amped,
course.
man.
Isn't it great?
Ready to go.
I know, yeah.
Love it.
Injecting
Who's the artist?
Valentine Wolf.
Yep.
Valentine Wolf.
They nailed it.
Kicking it.
They also do, so in some of the more recent episodes, we've been trying putting the stories section to music, and they did some music. What is it? The Goldberg piano stuff. Yeah, Cammy thought of that, and they did that as well for us. They're super great, so check them out if you like.
Awesome.
Everyone, this is Mythstorie, and that's Cammy. I didn't properly introduce the permanent guest. This is a show where every week we pick topics from a range of historical, mythological events, and we like to give you a story, and then we will talk about it, try and unravel some of the facts or what have you about that. That's not what we're doing today. This is a Two Truths and a Lie return in honor of Peter coming back, and also in honor of April Fool's Day, which will be tomorrow by the time this episode hits. So we've done this twice now, I believe, right? Just 2 times? Twice. So this is the 3rd time. Really excited because they're always really fun. And so we'll just get right into it. Basically what it is we're going to tell like 3 stories or events or what have you. And one of them's a lie. And we'll have to each guess. So Peter's going to go first. He'll tell 3 stories. And then Cammy and I guess which one's the lie. And then whoever gets the most lies unveiled correctly will win something, I guess.
Yes.
So
the
Peter,
the Loki prize.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, something totally legit. So Peter, why don't you take us away?
I will. So just to preface, a few months ago we did an episode on the signs of the zodiac, and it really got me kind of obsessed with the mythological stories behind the constellations. So that's going to be the theme for my stories. I am not going to unveil my sources until after you guys guess, because I'm afraid that I might tip my hat or show my hand, I guess. Okay. So I'm going to save those for later. So I've got a little introduction, and then we'll get into my 3 stories. So, before the invention of writing, our ancestors would look up or look into the dancing flames of their fires, the lush landscapes that swirled around them, and the canvas of stars that were sprawled overhead. And they began to tell each other stories. They told stories of a great bird that was reborn in a raging fire, a tall mountain that was the body of a sleeping giant, and a brave hero who fell in battle and whose body was placed amongst the stars. Do you guys know the term for naming constellations after mythological figures?
Oh, no.
It's called, here's your fact for today. It's called catasterism. It's the transformation of a hero or mythological creature into a star, constellation, or other celestial body. The Pleiades is a pretty well-known star cluster within the constellation of Taurus that appears again and again in myth and folklore all over the globe. The Pleiades is often called the 7 sisters or 7 birds, and first appeared in written text in 2350 BC in China. They appear later in Western civilization in the writings of Hesiod, Homer, and the Old and New Testaments. I recently read an article that suggested that the 7 Sisters story might be the oldest story in human history, first told in Africa nearly 100,000 years ago, where it spread through human migration to every corner of the earth. Now, I'm going to get a really well-known story out of the way. This is not one of the 2 truths or a lie, but this is where most people will know the Pleiades from Greek mythology. So in Greek mythology, the Pleiades are the 7 sisters, and they're the daughters of the Titan Atlas, and the fair maidens draw the attention of the insatiable hunter Orion. Atlas begs Zeus to protect his daughters from Orion's pursuits, and Zeus agrees, turning the 7 maidens into doves and placing them amongst the stars. Atlas is thus forever separated from his beloved daughters, but at least he can still gaze upon them in the night sky as he holds up the weight of the world. A constellation prize, if you will. Never one to resist another twist of the knife, Zeus ensures the Pleiades will forever be chased by Orion, as Zeus placed the hunter's body in the sky right next to the sisters after he fell in battle to Scorpio. So that's a little background. This is the first story. Our first Pleiades story comes from Iceland and the Prose Edda written by Snorri Sturluson in the 13th century. Following a fierce battle with the giant Hrungnir, Thor, the god of thunder, was recovering from his wounds. A piece of whetstone had become lodged in his forehead, and Thor was plagued by a piercing headache. He summoned the wise woman Groa, wife of Arvandil the Valiant. Groa bent over the stone embedded in Thor's head and sang her spells until the stone began to loosen. Thor, in his relief, began telling Groa of the heroic deeds of her husband. He told her that one day Thor and Arvandil were returning from fighting in the frozen wastes of Jotunheim when they came to a swift, icy stream. The violent current would surely sweep Arvandil away, and only Thor's stout legs and belt of strength would be able to withstand the icy river. Thor would carry Arvandil in a basket strapped to his back. As Thor plunged into the freezing water, the waves crashed against his skin like an army of icy spears. Arvandil remained safe and warm inside the basket, except for one of his toes, which slipped through a hole in the basket. When Thor finally made it across the river, he discovered that Arvandil's toe had been frozen solid. The haughty god snapped off the frozen toe and flung it into the heavens. And to this day, Germanic and Scandinavian cultures call the Pleiades star cluster Arvandil's toe. So that is story number 1.
That's cool.
Story number 2. The Pleiades lie within 4 degrees of the ecliptic, which means it can be seen in both the northern and southern hemispheres in the spring and autumn. When the Pleiades rises near dawn, it signals the beginning of the seafaring and farming seasons. For this reason, stories involving the Pleiades usually incorporate themes of fertility and purity, as our next story illustrates. The Kiowa tribe near Devil's Tower, Oklahoma, tell a story about 7 maidens who were chased into the heavens by giant bears. Winter was approaching, and the tribe had begun its migration south. They camped near a river where many bears were hunting for fish. One day, 7 young girls were playing by the river and strayed further and further from their camp. The girls became surrounded by a group of hungry bears and scrambled up onto a boulder where the bears' grasping claws could not reach them. But the girls were trapped. How would they ever escape the bears? They prayed together to the Great Spirit to help them, and the Great Spirit heard their cries and caused the boulder to grow upwards with almost vertical sides, carrying the girls towards the sky and leaving the bears far behind. Undaunted, the bears tried to climb the great vertical column of rock, leaving a smooth surface gouged by their claws. Their clawing caused the rock to grow even taller, eventually pushing the 7 girls into the stars. And this story also describes the formation of Devil's Tower. So if you've seen Close Encounters of the Third Kind, that big, scary rock, that's the origin story for how that, from the Kiowa tribe, about how that rock came to be. All right, this one might be my favorite. In Hungary, the Pleiades are known as the Fiestuk, meaning hen with chicks. Hungarians tell the story of a poor woman who put a curse on her 7 sons and turned them into ravens. One day, the poor old woman went out into the woods to scrounge for food, bringing her youngest, purest son with her and leaving her 7 coarse and lazy sons back at her crumbling hovel. The woman searched and hunted all day, but all she was able to bring back was a small pitcher of goat's milk. She warned her sons that the milk would have to last them several days, but when she woke in the morning, she found that her 7 sons had drunk up all the milk. In her fury, the old woman cursed her 7 sons, and she watched as their skin blackened into dark feathers, their backs became twisted and contorted, and their screams became the harsh cackles of ravens. The poor woman was consumed with regret as her raven sons took wing and flew towards the setting sun. She searched and searched for them for many days, but could not find a trace of the raven boys. Finally, she received a premonition from a traveling witch that the ravens could only be found by her last remaining son. Dutifully, the young boy set out in search of his brothers. He came to the house of sun, but found only shadows. He came to the house of wind, and the wind whispered into his ear, "A mill is grinding your brothers' bodies, but they cannot die. Drop your own blood into the meal, and the spell will be broken, and you will all be reunited." The youngest brother searched until he found the mill where his brothers' bodies were perpetually ground beneath heavy stones. Without hesitating, he threw himself under the great stone wheel. As his blood mingled with that of his lost brothers, the spell was broken. The spirits of all 8 brothers rose into the night sky, and they hang there still, like an unkindness of ravens in a thorny tree.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
if you ever wondered what a group of ravens, they're an unkindness is what a group of ravens is called.
Oh, yeah, murder of crows, unkindness of crows. I like that. Or ravens, yeah. Those are great stories because they really exemplify a lot of what we talk about, Peter, where it's these different cultures seeing, like, thinking of the same thing, but it just happens to kind of grow its own stories. So that's a really great approach to this. Cammy, do you know which one you're gonna?
I don't know. I feel like it's number 2, and here's why. It's the other story probably does exist, so it's like there's this other story, and then we're adding to it the the explanation for the Pleiades.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go with 2.
Okay.
2. Okay.
Can I just say though that number 1, like, it sounds like it's not true, but just the idea that the Norse would talk about toes and think that was appropriate is that's like so them that I just have to give you credit.
Yes.
So
well,
very bodily.
I'll go with 1 then. It was between 1 and 2 for me, but I'll go with 1 just because I think that there's a lot of heavy truth in there, but I think Peter knows enough about it all to be able to spin it a little bit. So and if anything, you're just doing what Snorri did in the 14th century, or anyway, he just decided to make this crap up at that time.
So you think I just repurposed the story?
That's what I'll go with. Yeah, that's what I'm going to go with.
All right. Well, I will reveal the lie by talking a little bit about my sources. So I have to credit the Hungarian folk metal band Hardrada and their song "The House of Sun and Wind," which I have to put a link to when we put this episode up because it's amazing. Yeah. They're a folk metal band, and they put this old Hungarian folktale into like a rocking song, and that's where I got the kind of text for the Hungarian story, which is true. The Kiowa story I got from lucindariley.co.uk. It is true. So Bryant, you are correct.
Awesome.
The lie was story number 1. The story is a true story. Like the Arvandel's toe, that is a real story, and it's a real constellation, but it is not the 7 sisters or the Pleiades. They do have a name for that though. They call it Freya's chicks. But there wasn't a very interesting story. There wasn't a very interesting story to go along with it, so I had to steal Snorri's story and attribute it to that star cluster. So Brian, you got it.
All right. That's what, and that's what I figured, because it sounded like it was. It's kind of like what I do for my like lies in this segment. You got to base it in something and just kind of shift it a little bit. Otherwise, it's really.
Am I the only one that just completely made it up?
Probably. Yeah.
I usually
hard.
I've completely made up mine in the past, but I don't know. There were so many good Pleiades stories, like,
and I think one of your last lies in one of the other episodes was like an Indigenous American myth, or I can't remember. So I almost that was one thing that made me think about maybe he's going with that again for number 2. But I then the story thing, I was like, I don't think it's quite. I don't think there was a direct explanation like that. Almost like Freya's chicks. Like, yeah, they might be known as Freya's chicks, but I don't think there'd be a direct story like that. There wouldn't be a direct explanation story, I think, in Norse mythology for something like that. So just concepts and fun stories about Loki messing with everybody. So very cool, Peter. Excellent work. That was really great.
Good job.
Really, really good. All right, Cammy, are you ready to go next?
I am ready to go next.
Do it.
It began in 1915 when Australian soldiers were returning from war and needed jobs. The government quickly began clearing land to give these soldiers to build farms. The land they were using was encroaching on the wildlife in the area, and by the 1930s, these soldiers had a menacing threat to tend to: the emu uprising. 20,000 emu. The Australian military was sent to dispatch the birds. First, the military moved into formation behind a large horde of their foe, but the birds dispersed so quickly, only managing to hit a handful of the creatures. The second attempt fared not better. The soldiers were only able to fell 50 of the 1,000 emus they sighted. They even went so far as to deploy armored vehicles, but the enemy was too fast. After running the numbers, it took 10 bullets per kill. The military had to withdraw their efforts and declare defeat. These are all war stories.
That's great. That's great. I'm not doing war stories really this time, or mostly. So that's good. I'm glad you're taking it.
While scones have been around since at least the 1500s, it wasn't until 1908 that a royal decree finally decided the origin of the baked good. Scotland had always prized itself as the origin of the pastry, but the English, fueled by the bravado of early archaeology, found a reference to the food in a translation of the Aeneid by an English author, Gavin Douglas. The Crown officially declared the biscuit as an English invention. The Secretary for Scotland, John Sinclair, would not have the Crown meddling in the affairs of his people, so he sent a diplomat to meet with King Edward VII on deciding the matter. The king refused to meet with him and sent him back to Scotland without any conversation of the beloved treat. Sinclair was furious, so he sent a letter of his intent to declare war on the crown if the issue was not resolved, and he sent proof of Gavin Douglas's heritage as a Scottish person. Edward VII, having no interest in starting a war with his own country, decided to let the matter pass and sent out an official royal decree that the scone hailed from Scotland. And then my last story.
I love it.
In 1959, Eisenhower was doing everything he could to inundate the Soviet Union with American culture. Vice President Richard Nixon was sent as an ambassador of capitalism. But Nixon, being Nixon, got into an argument with Khrushchev. Is that how you say it? Khrushchev? Khrushchev, okay. Who was the leader of the Soviet Union. Well, the president of the beverage company, Pepsi, was there to intervene. He asked Khrushchev try the famous drink, and Russia was in love. A few years passed, and the Soviet Union wanted to bring Pepsi in to be enjoyed by their people. But Soviet currency wasn't accepted everywhere, so they traded vodka for a time. But when their deal with Pepsi was expiring, the vodka deal was off the table. Pepsi needed something worth more, so the Soviet Union traded Pepsi a fleet of military boats, including 17 submarines and a destroyer vessel. This exchange made the soda giant the 6th largest military in the world.
That's amazing.
I love it. Cammy.
Oh man,
Peter, what are you feeling? Yeah.
Oh jeez. They're all really good. I was a little skeptical of the numbers in the emu story. It sounded a little a little over the top. So I'm gonna go with the emu story.
Cammy, you were right. I am aware which of the two truths here. I'm very familiar with them. I have to say, though, it's because I follow on Reddit a few historical meme. I mean, I follow plenty of historical Reddits, subreddits, but a few meme ones. And these are much talked about. So I do know it is the scone or the scone story is the lie.
You're correct.
Thank you very much.
That is a lot of emos, though.
Yeah, it's a tremendous event.
And
I love that they lost. It's just my favorite that they lost.
Yep. Just like
yeah, it's incredibly wild. And the Pepsi thing too. Yeah, they managed this fleet basically. They were like an incredibly powerful soda pop corporation for some time. But
do they still have all that stuff?
Origins.
No, I think they sold it very quickly.
Yeah.
Probably unethically too. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. That's cool. No, that's I didn't know the specific origins of the Pepsi story too. I remember just like the big headlines of it and stuff. So
yeah, I used I found both the emu war and the Pepsi thing on TikTok. But I used Business Insider, how Pepsi became the 6th largest military in the world. And there was an article in Scientific American about the Great Emu War.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, that was really good
awesome
job, for sure.
And Bryant is 2 for 2. He has sniffed out both lies.
Yeah, he's going to win.
All right. Well, we'll see.
Yeah,
I think I do win, right?
There's no way. We might as well just cut the episode.
Yeah, it's done. All right. Well, my stories are short and fun, so I'm gonna dive right into it. I think I'm gonna go in chronological order. I wasn't sure how I was gonna say it, so I'll start off about this man and a couple exploits of his. So there was this Viking king, Harald Hardrada, which Harald Sigurdsson was his name, but Hardrada was his title. It literally means like hard ruler. He was just that kind of guy. Super awesome guy from the early 11th century. He was a Norwegian Norse warrior who was a Christian, though, and he even served on the famous Byzantine Varangian Guard, which was a unique guard that the emperor had. Remember, the Byzantines are basically the Romans, the Greek-speaking Romans that maintained for quite some time after the fall of the Western side, and they were comprised of Scandinavian, Norse, Anglo-Saxons, Germanic, basically everyone who wasn't like Mediterranean, essentially, from that area. Anyway, Harald served on there. He had a lot of great exploits. He eventually would become a king of Norway, as written by Snorri Sturluson in the Heimskringla later when he was writing the history of the kings. And one of the most famous stories of Harald, though, other than his general exploits, was the time when he was campaigning in Italy for the Byzantines, regaining some territory that was taken from them as Romans. And there were 2 stubborn cities that they couldn't breach. And long sieges weren't always fun. So when they were exploring the walls, the armaments, trying to find a weakness, Harald noticed birds as they would forage. They'd come from these trees around the cities. So he ordered his men to grab the birds, to capture the birds, and tie little pieces of tinder to them. He set them aflame, and lo and behold, when the birds realized that they had fire stuck to their bodies, they would run back to their homes, their nests, inside the city, inside the trees, causing great fires all inside of the city, which then forced the gates open, which his Varangian warriors would run right in and absolutely destroy the opposition. In the same campaign season, he also was besieging a city, and to help speed it up, he faked his death. And because these were all Christians, these weren't pagan Norse warriors, they said, our leader's dead, we're done. We would absolutely love it, though, if he could be interred in your beautiful church inside. And of course they said, yes, we will absolutely do that. So they get this beautiful coffin where Harold's inside. Lo and behold, as the service begins, he pops out and they murder everybody and take the city.
The old Trojan horse.
Yeah.
Trojan coffin. Yeah.
Norse coffin. Yeah. My next story takes place a few years later, about 50 years later, during the First Crusade. This is the Siege of Antioch. Now, this is one of the First Crusade, like all crusades, was a complete disaster in many retrospects. But the Siege of Antioch was important. So this was a coalition of forces, many European forces, many from France. Remember, this was in a united France. So it was all the little kingdoms and fiefdoms, the Normans, many others. But the Norman prince Bohemond essentially led it. And after they took the city with the help of some inside bribery from the guards to open up a section of the walls, they did take it over, but the forces were so weak, they were able to kill everyone in the city, but the reinforcements were already on their way. The Arab reinforcements were already on their way. So they had to prepare. Many of the Crusaders were already deserting. So Bohemond was trying to find a way with his other generals, Raymond of Toulouse especially, and a self-proclaimed priest, Peter Bartholomew, who this entire time had been having many visions sent by God of how to kind of keep everyone together, claimed that he had a dream that a holy relic was hidden inside the city. Now, Bohemond didn't really believe him. He was spouting this kind of stuff the entire time. But Raymond of Toulouse, who was one of the other guys in charge, believed him. So they started digging. And lo and behold, after digging for some time, they find a matted up piece of cloth, which Peter Bartholomew instantly recognizes as the cloth diaper of Christ. And with this diaper, they are able to rally the troops who were starving already. They had already eaten their horses, and they were ready to abandon it. The cloth diaper rallied them. Raymond of Toulouse held it, and they were able to meet the forces, led by the reserve Islamists. They came and they routed them, and they were able to keep Antioch, which became an extremely important city for Norman hands for a couple years, and was really important for later pilgrimages and crusades. All right, last story. This is a good one.
That's amazing.
Last story is I have titled this, and Wikipedia has too. The Sword of State, the Sword of the State of South Carolina. While the background of the sword is clear, it is a sword made around 1704 by the Crown Council of Lords and was instilled in the South Carolina Senate after the South Carolina's Revolution in 1719. This sword was purely for ceremonial purposes and would be laid when the Senate was in session. One day in 1941, before the Senate went into session, the sword was gone. Of course, this is 1941. There's no fingerprint. There's nothing you can do about it. So they didn't think much of it, and they thought it would get returned. But it wasn't until 1968 that they put a public statement that they agreed that if anyone would return the sword, there would be no questions asked. Following its theft, a special cavalry saber was borrowed from the Charleston Museum, used until 1951, when the Earl of Halifax, learning that the blade was stolen, got an authentic replacement from in the same vein, where it is there today. But the original sword of the state of South Carolina is still missing.
If that's true, let's go find it.
Mythstorie hunters finding the sword of our state. So, and yeah, you may not know, listeners, we are all South Carolinians. We are here. So that was a fun story. So that's what I got for y'all.
Wow.
Okay.
Who's feeling it?
I don't know if Monty Python was just super correct in their history or whatever, but God, that second one is just
I'm imagining this banner with this diaper hanging.
And the fact that he instantly recognizes it. I don't think they used diapers back then. I'm gonna go with 2.
Yeah, okay. Peter, how you feel?
Okay. Oh man, the first story was so amazing. Geez. I'm gonna go for that one because it's just so crazy and it's like this Rube Goldberg machine of a story. I love it. So I'm gonna.
Bryant loves those though. I will say I've lived in South Carolina for the entire time I've been alive. Well, not really, but I mean I grew up here, and I've never heard of the sword.
Yeah.
Ever. But I'm still going with 2.
I'm going with Peter, 1, but
you're going with Harold Hardrada's campaigns.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
With the firebombing birds.
Yeah. So, Cammy is correct. The lie is in the Siege of Antioch story, but now Peter. The thing is, these are records. In the source for Harold Hardrada stuff is in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, as well as a few other like relative things. So there's a chance this may have never happened. I would say the coffin one definitely seems believable. The bird one, it's tough to think about. But Harold, I mean, he was a Viking. I want to point out, I got my first kind of, I'm very aware of Harold Hardrada. He's been featured in Civilization, Sid Meier's games before as a ruler of Norway. And the cool thing about him is he's like very much a Christian, but he's a lot like his Norman distant cousins, where they became like European Christian, but they really held on to their Viking pagan heritage, by being these ruthless, crazy dudes. So I could absolutely see. That's why I'm glad I picked Harold, because I knew that those tales would be so like. It sounds believable, but is it? So and the sort of state of the sword in South Carolina. So this is really cool. A year ago in February, right before the pandemic really hit, my uncle had done a surprise visit from England to visit my mom for her birthday, and it was really cool. And I took him to the State House for a tour, and we went into like the chamber. And you could see this. There's a sword there, and there was a gentleman. I can't remember his title. It wasn't usher or something like that, but he sort of is like a doorman of some kind and maintains things. But he knows very well, and they let us like go behind the "do not cross this line." And he explained this. He told me the story of this sword, and I looked it up, and yeah, it's absolutely real. It's an old sword from the English colonial period when there was just the Carolinas, and then just in 1941 it vanished, and it has never been seen since. There's a replacement sword there. It's still put out there very ceremoniously, in a fun, archaic way, like a classical callback to 300-400 years ago. But yes, the sword, the original sword, is still out there somewhere.
We have to find it.
I'm guessing it's just thank you, Cammy. I'm guessing it's just some like guy, some just like farmer who was visiting and just accidentally took it home, and it's just in his hat.
And he has no idea.
No idea.
Yeah, it might be.
That looks like my sword. Is that my sword? I'm going to take that. That's what I would guess, right? 1940s. But and then the Siege of Antioch.
Everybody had a sword in the 40s.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how you walked around. And then the Siege of Antioch. Now this was the one where it's kind of unfair, because so much of this is true, and literally in my kind of quick version of the story, you just replace diaper with a rusted spearhead, and you're good to go. This dude, Peter Bartholomew, was a crazy guy. He did have a dream that the Holy Lance that pierced Christ was in the city, even though the First Crusade kind of started the planning process. All the European leaders went to Constantinople, and they all had to swear oaths to the Emperor Alexius I that they would return all this land to him and stuff like that. They didn't, but they literally saw the Holy Lance. Like, they had all the relics. Like every major Christian relic was pretty much in Byzantium at this period. So like many of these guys literally just saw it. I mean, whether it is to be said, but like if there was one, Alexios had it in his bathroom or something. So so much of this was true in how it was. But yeah, this Bartholomew dude, anytime the campaign was going wrong, he had a dream, everything was good, and that's kind of how it worked. But they rallied behind this Holy Lance. Raymond of Toulouse, he charged into battle with it. They fought off the Islamic relief forces, and they were able to keep the city of Antioch for some time as a really important city. And Bohemond the Norman, he was kind of set himself up in charge of it. But yeah, so I just kind of implanted. I thought a cloth diaper would be. I wanted to make it like just a little more recognizable. So I imagine they'd have cloth diapers back then. Yeah,
I don't know.
You'd
I figured they just like you would like wrap the baby. I just don't know if they had like a separate. I don't know.
Sure,
I think they probably did.
Yeah,
they have to have something.
They'd call I don't know what the Aramaic word for diaper is, so I should have looked that up. Well, that was great, guys. Very good work to both of you. Thanks so much. This is always fun to do these stories. So let us know how you did. If you beat me, did you get 3 out of 3? How'd you go? Let us know. So remember, you can watch this on YouTube and then, of course, listen to us anywhere. But please let us know what you think. Take a look at our link tree in the bottom in the description. That'll link you to all of our stuff, including merchandise that you can get from threadless.com. We've got a Discord channel that you can use to kind of talk with us directly. If you have any suggestions for myths or legends that you think we should talk about, please let us know. In fact, we just had someone, I made a mistake talking about Vikings and the early North American exploits. We've decided to do a whole episode on this as well as correct it. So stay tuned to hear that very soon. But again, thank you guys. Happy April Fool's Day. I am the April Fooler, I guess, right? The April Fool champion. Well, anyway, that's right. I low-keyed y'all today. So I think that about covers it, guys. Anything else to add?
I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, Cammy, thanks for coming as always. Peter, it was great having you on. Hopefully we'll do like a traditional Podicus Magnus soon where we have wine and fun jaunts of discussions coming very soon. But otherwise, we will see you all next time.
Oh.